Okay. Okay. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. And then the success of our learning, we should have Beis Hamikdash immediately. Okay, today we're going to start the bottom two lines of 11b. Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Yep. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. I'm not familiar with Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef. Familiar with Rabbi Yitzchak, that I think is a student of Rabbi Yochanan. Maybe this is him. In Rabbi Yochanan, as we know, it says like this. Now, Imar l'shluchai. Someone says to a messenger, a shliach, say v'kadosh li isha stam, go and betroth a woman to me. And he doesn't specify which woman. He just says, go find me a wife. Well, you know that you can do that. You don't have to actually do the kedushin yourself. You can find the messenger to do the kedushin. Yeah, like Eliezer. Did Eliezer do a kedushin? Did he give Rivka, gave her bracelets, whatever? But was that considered kedushin or was that gift? I don't know. Well, betrothed could be. So Asur b'chol hanashim sheba'olam. Turns out is that we don't know exactly who it was that the shliach had married this fellow to. Reuben sent Shimon to go be my shliach to find me a wife. So we're going to assume that Shimon did his mission. We just don't know to who. Well, chazaka. So the rule is that Reuben is prohibited to marry any woman in the world. Every woman in the world is prohibited to him. Why? Chazaka shliach shlichusay. There's a chazaka. There's a assumption that the shliach Shimon actually found someone, and he fulfilled his shlichus. Even the late parishlei, since he didn't specify, he doesn't know who he's married to. Now, it's not a problem if he goes and he marries a woman that he was already married to. The problem is if he's married to the mother or daughter of the woman that he now wants to marry. So what it means over here that he's prohibited to every woman, it means every woman that has a sister or a mother and a daughter that's around. It could be that close relative is the one that he's really married to, and then he's prohibited to this. Taisus asks an interesting question. It says, question like this. Why is the rest of the world allowed to get married? Maybe the entire world should be prohibited to get married because no one in the world could get married. Because maybe this is the one that was married to so-and-so, to Reuven. Now, I think there's Zika, right? That's the term. No, Zika would be by Yivam. But here, so first of all, we have to set up what's the parameters of this discussion. We're not talking about a woman that we can ask. We're only talking about a child, obviously. And obviously the father's not around to ask the father. So it's not really all the women in the world. It's all the women that won't be able to respond that we can trust. So talking about why are any of these women, any children, any young girls that don't have a father, why are all of them permitted to get married at all? Maybe the father or the daughter accepted the kedushin somehow. Would be the father accepted the kedushin. If the father died already, then it would have to be the brothers. It wouldn't be a biblical kedushin. The father accepted the kedushin and died. All of them should be prohibited.
You're saying that there's
a chance that was the one, that she might be the one, and said that right. The Gemara's question, the statement of Rabbi Yochanan is that this girl may be a relative. I'm sorry. This person that he's marrying may be a relative of that girl. Okay. Mother,
marriage,
and it would be a prohibited marriage.
Sister.
Right. Question is that the person, the Reuven that sends the shliach to marry him, to betroth the wife to him, he doesn't know who it was. Okay, so we say that Reuben can't marry any women in the world because maybe it's a relative. It doesn't mean really any women. It means any women that would be in the situation where there would be a girl that can't be asked.
Well, that's just the shliach.
Because of the shlichus, because of there's a shliach. The question is, why is anyone allowed to marry these girls? Everyone should be prohibited. So Tosfos says that we're not dealing with the real issue here. We're dealing with the knas. It's just the fine that we impose on him because he made a marriage like that, where he said, just find me a girl, and he didn't specify which girl. So we put a fine on him that he can't marry anyone because we don't know. But it's not a real issue. And why? Why is it not a real issue? Because every girl is assumed to be part of the majority that's not betrothed. Majority of girls are not. Midaraisi, you follow the rights. Everything is good. Majority.
In the case that the girl's father had a marriage like arranged for her, and then he passed, like what happens in that case, and nobody knows about this?
That would be a problem. Yeah.
But
That's what we're dealing with here.
How would they know? Like if the only one that knew was him, and he passed away, like
Well, there would have to have been a man.
okay.
That had to arrange the marriage
And
with.
then how do you confirm if he's the only one saying, oh, like I was married to her?
He would have to figure that out. He would have to figure out witnesses and stuff. And I see a fight ensuing.
Very popular.
That's a bit of a problem. So Tosfos then goes on, very good. Tosfos then goes on and says, what about kavua? Shouldn't we consider the woman kavua and call kavua k'mechtal nechta? Tosfos then says that we don't consider it kavua when you don't have, kavua is only if you have something that's clearly prohibited, something that's clearly permissible. Since all of that is vague for us, we don't have the people that are clearly prohibited and clearly permissible. So therefore, it's not considered kavua either. Kavua would have to have a defined prohibition.
Actually says it brings it up there.
Tosfos, this is Tosfos, in this top Tosfos here. Okay.
Is this statement about the chazaka a general statement about
Yeah.
shlichut?
Yeah. There's the chazaka shliach shlichus. Someone said that in Bris.
In this case, really not really a huge issue because he sent the shliach off to go find it. The shliach to come back,
Says that he
it's
married.
only in that time that he's away that we have the challenge.
Right. You're right.
Like
I think what's
can't wait. He suddenly decides, wait, no, I want to get married now. I don't want to wait till the shliach comes back.
Right.
Eventually, I don't have to get married.
right. Also, the issue is when the shliach like passed away. You can't ask the shliach. That's where so.
Because we assume that the shliach, we assume that the shliach did it.
Shlichus before he passed away. Before he passed away, yeah. That's our assumption. Yeah, in Brisk, they were concerned that they wouldn't be able to do bedikas chametz well. You have to check every single crack to do bedikas chametz. So they would appoint a shliach to do it. And then chazaka shliach es shlichusay. That's even better than if I do it, then I don't know if I do it correctly. But if I use a shliach, there's a chazaka that a shliach does it right. There's an inherent problem with that logic. Let's see. Okay. Esvei Reish Lakish l'Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish asks Rabbi Yochanan a question. It's interesting because this was being said over from Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef. Now we're going back to the conversation with Rabbi Yochanan himself. With Reish Lakish has a question for him. It says like this: Kain stuma. This is a pair of birds that was designated as a sacrifice for a zav or a zava or yeledes, these possible impurities that you have to bring two birds. One bird is a chatas and one bird is an oila. This person did not designate which one is which is a chatas, which is oila. So, but it's been designated as a sacrifice. It just wasn't designated which one is which. It's called stuma. It's unspecified. One of the birds flew off to the world, escaped. or it flew away and it's now mixed in with sacrifices that are not going to be brought, which is because those sacrifices have to be, those animals have to die because they're, for whatever reason, they can't be used. Now, what the Gemara means over here is that if it would have flown into chatais, other sacrifices that can be used, then I would just designate it right now, and then we won't have this discussion that's about to come up. But here it's going into a place where these animals can't be used. These birds can't be used. Or just one of these birds, two birds died. So what do? Then you just replace it. You get another bird. But if it's already been specified, then there's nothing you could do. You have to get a whole new pair. Talking about that we don't know what the remaining one is. We don't know if the remaining one is a chatas or a naila. And so therefore, when you lose one of them, I can't bring it as a chatas because maybe the chatas flew away. I can't bring it as a ayla because maybe the ayla flew away. So you have to get new birds. Both. You have to replace both. But I'm not worried about all the other birds in the world. Why am I not worried about other birds in the world? According to Rabbi Yochanan, that says that maybe every single girl in the world is married, this fellow is married to the mother, sister, daughter of one of every girl in the world. Maybe when you're going to buy those birds, maybe you're actually buying a bird, or when you're going to get the birds, you're actually getting one of the birds that flew away. If you're worried about every girl in the world was married to this guy, so maybe every bird in the world is for the bird that we lost. Maybe every single bird, we should say that's the bird that we lost. Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan responded, Kamina ana isha delainaida, barmatli at isura denayed. Rabbi Yochanan responds that by a woman it's more strict because a woman is stationary. And we said we call that kavua in Taisvis.
I'm not sure if I'm lost, but here it describes a different situation.
Yeah, no, now we're, go ahead.
That's what.
Now we're on the next page. The next page, we had if it was mifreshes, we had if it was specified. Now we're holding at the answer.
Thank you.
Only at the answer. So just like we said before, that there's a concept of kafua, anything that's stationary. Remember the difference between someone finds meat on the floor in front of the stores. There's one non-kosher store and there's 9 kosher stores. He finds meat on the floor, so we say that it came from the kosher store, majority. If he goes into a store and buys meat and he walks out, he doesn't know which store he went into. So then we say that meat's not kosher because there was one store there that wasn't kosher. We don't know which one it is. It's called kavua because the doubt originated in something that was permanent. It wasn't something that left from the majority. When we say something is left from it, we say, where did this come from? It came from, we found it in a situation where the question was on it, and it was not in one of the stores. We found it outside the stores. So when the doubt arose, it was already removed from the permanent store. However, if the doubt originated in one of the stores, then we would say that each one is 50-50. Did I go into the store? I don't know. Did I go into the store? I don't know. Did I go into the store? Everyone would be a 50-50 question. And then we would say, well, you have a 50-50 there. I don't add them all up because each one has its own question. So what we're saying over here is that each woman is more similar to like those stores where each woman has its own individual question. Was this the woman?
That's the concept of kavua.
Kavua,
Kavua is
yeah.
like kav, like approximately. Generally, the Hebrew.
No, kavod means permanent.
Oh,
What are you holding in here today?
depends on Shabbos.
You're doing Shabbos.
Yeah.
This is a big discussion. Remember this? Kavua?
Too well.
We're doing Zara. So in the case of the woman,
In the case of women, we're going to view it more like a 50-50. That's we're going to be stricter. It's not literally kavua, but it's more leaning towards the kavua versus the bird, which is flying everywhere and it has no permanent place. Okay. So Rabbi Yochanan is responding to Rish Lakish. You're asking me about birds when I'm talking about women. So that's not a good question. The birds don't have any permanence, and the woman is she has a house. The commentaries add in that a woman stays home. Called Kuda Bas Melech Prima. Birds have a nest, but they don't stay in the nest. The woman has a nest, and she stays there. Yeah. He's saying the baby bird. Right. Okay. If you say that, 1 second, but the woman also, she goes out of the house. Maybe I was saying maybe he found her in the marketplace and he betrothed her over there. So it should be more comparable to the birds. Gemara says Hasam Hajad Lenichusa, but the woman always goes back to where her place is. Gabikan Mihadra, but by the birds, do they always go back to their place? I don't know. Depends, I guess, which type of birds. I don't know if they could be the birds have a nest, but only for their young, and they don't. If there's no young there, then they don't go back. I don't know. Okay, anyway, that's Rabbi Yochanan's answer to Rish Lakish. Amar Rava. Rava adds 1 point. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan would agree. The Isha she'ein la leibas ben aim achais. Baf bishais la achais v'neskar shalach mikan da hahi sharia. My time the bahi shai to the kamale having a sivan legavri. Mash v'shliach b'mosa the kaima kamei b'mosa the kaima kamei le mash v'shliach. Okay, I'll explain what that was. Rabbi Yochanan says that Rava says that Rabbi Yochanan would admit that if this girl did not have a daughter, a granddaughter, either a daughter's daughter or a son's daughter, she also didn't have a mother or a grandmother, she doesn't have any sisters, so then this girl would be permissible to Reuven. Because we know that the shliach did not marry any of her close relatives. Maybe married her, but so what? That would be permissible. So therefore, this girl is permissible. We explained that before. Rava adds in 1 point. He says, let's say she had a sister, but that sister was married. Now the sister's divorced. While the sister was married, shliach, of course, was not able to give the kedushin to that sister. She was married. Now she's divorced. We assume that the shliach didn't give the kedushin to her right now, right? So we say that this girl would be permissible because the shliach would only be able to. We assume that the shliach would perform the shlichus only things that were available at the time that he was appointed as a shliach. think what's happening here is that Reuven is sending Shimon as a shliach. We're assuming that Reuven has in mind, when he's making a shliach, Reuven has in mind only the available options that exist at that time. So therefore, Shimon would not have married would not have done the kedushin for Reuven on a woman that wasn't available at the time that Reuven had appointed him. It's only what Reuven would have had in mind. And that's what it sounds like. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Let's take a look at the Gemara as a question on this. Tanan, there's a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Harini Nazir v'alayla galeach Nazir. Person accepts, this is our Mishnah that we had before. Person accepts on himself to be a Nazir, and he also accepts on himself that he's going to contribute sacrifices. He's going to donate the sacrifices for another Nazir. Over here it's called, he's going to shave the head of the other Nazir, which means he's going to give sacrifices for the other Nazir. His friend here is Vamar Ba'ani. He says, me too. And I'm also going to give the gifts, the sacrifice of another Nazir. The Mishnah said that if these people are intelligent, they'll donate each other's sacrifices, and then there'll be no loss there. They're each of them a Nazir and need sacrifices, so they'll just exchange with each other. 30 days from Purim. So that's what the Shalach Manas is. They exchange with each other. That's okay. So, V'imlav, if they don't do that, then Megalcha Nazir Nachem, then they have to shave other Nazirim's, other Nazir's head, which means that they're going to have to bring sacrifices for outside, which means they have to bring 2 sets of their own and plus someone else. The Gemara now says, asks this question on what Rava stated. It says, Bishleim Basra, Ikakadma Kame. The second person that said, me too, and I'm also going to bring sacrifice for someone else. He knows who that someone else could be, the first guy. However, but how could the first person have in mind the second person that he's going to bring sacrifices for him? According to what we just said, that when someone appoints a shliach, he appoints a shliach, he only has in mind what's available right now. So when he says, I'm going to bring a sacrifice for another Nazir, this person wasn't a Nazir yet. So he doesn't have him in mind. That couldn't be what he had in mind. Rather, you have to say like this. How do they translate that? If it turns out that he'll be a Nazir, I'll shave his head. In other words, he's adjusting the phrase, not that I'm going to bring the sacrifices for another Nazir. Just if someone else becomes a Nazir, he does it more with a future term. See that? It's the top line over here. No. It's, if I find someone who becomes a Nazir, I will shave him. Yeah. The Gemara says, well, if that's the way you're going to read it, that what it means is that someone becomes a Nazir, so maybe the same thing applies to the woman. Maybe he means also when he's appointing a Reuven, is appointing a shliach to marry him, a woman. Maybe he means that if you find someone that gets divorced, you should betroth her to me. How do you know it's only people that are available right now? Maybe it's me. That's what he's saying. Gemara says, "Amri loy mashvi in a shliach el b'milsa d'matziyavet hashta. Milsa d'matziyavet hashta loy mashvi." Gemara says that when you want to make a shliach, you have to. The shliach is being appointed for things that you're able to do immediately, right now. But anything that you're not able to do now, you can't make a shliach do for later. If a woman comes onto the market later, marriage, the shidduch market. So then, because he wasn't able to do the Reuven wasn't able to do the marriage now, so he can't make Shimon a shliach to do the marriage at a later point. So now we have answered the question, because over here the Nazir wasn't making a shliach; he was doing it himself. He was saying, "I'm going to bring birds for someone else. Not birds. I'm going to bring sacrifices for someone else."
If it takes the shliach for himself a month to get to the other place, he would be able to marry the lady that month after. That doesn't matter.
Now we're saying that
Since
because it needs to be at the appointment of the shlichus. The appointment at that when he's appointed, it has to be available.
So then,
Because we're talking about what the person has in mind when he is appointing the shliach.
so let's say if there's a divorcee, the shliach would have to ask, when were you divorced? And if there wasn't a time frame,
Right.
whether enough,
Right.
she wouldn't be able to.
Right. A recently divorced woman won't work with the shlichus. That's the way the Gemara is looking at it now. And they have to wait anyways 3 months. That's a good point.
3 months plus the time of the trip.
The Gemara says, "V'loi, you can't make a shliach to do something that you're not able to do right now." 1 second, Tashema, come and listen. If someone says to his caretaker, his trustee, his caretaker, "Kol nedarim shetider ishti mikan ad she'avei makom pleni hafala." Any vow that my wife makes until I return from such and such a place, during that time till I return, you should annul it for me. Annul her vows. And he annulled the vows. Maybe that should work. Maybe the trustee is able to, the caretaker is able to annul vows for the husband that's on a trip. You can annul vows during the first 24 hours or until nightfall. He can annul those vows. Talmud Lama, the pasuk says no. Isha Yekimena Vishi for no. It's only the husband. The husband can annul. The husband can upkeep the vows. We learned this in the Dharm. Rabbi Yomi says, Rabbi Yomi says, no. He appointed a shliach. Shliach works. The husband can appoint a shliach to annul the vows. Time, Madam Rachmanishi. Okay, now we go back. Right here, we have a question. From Rabbi Yomi. The woman didn't make the vows yet. Rabbi Yomi says that he can appoint the shliach to do things that haven't happened yet. But the Gemara is not satisfied with asking from Rabbi Yomi. It wants to ask from Rabbi Yeshua as well. It says, "Time Adam Rachmani Shik Menavish Fereno." Even according to Rabbi Yeshua, this really should work. If not for the pasuk, I have a pasuk that tells me that you can't do it. If not for that pasuk that says that the husband is the one that annuls it, apotropos mefer, then the apotropos, the shliach or the messenger, the caretaker, is able to annul the vows. What about the husband himself? Can he annul vows in the future? Tanya was taught in a brayso. If someone tells his wife, any vows that you take until I return from such and such a place, they should be good vows. They should be standing. So he hasn't said anything. That doesn't count. But let's say he says they should be annulled. These all future vows that the wife is going to make. So this is a machlekes. Rabbi Elazar says that it works, and the Chum say it doesn't work. Yeah, we had this 2 months ago. So kasal kadaitach, the Gemara assumes, in order to get to squeeze a question out of this, the Gemara makes an assumption. Kasal kadaitach kiyam Rabbi Yeshua liba derabanan. The Rabbanan say that you cannot annul vows that haven't been made yet. Rabbi Yeshua says that if he makes a shliach to annul vows while he's away, any vows that she makes while he's away, that it would work if not for a pasuk, which means that a shliach, you can appoint a shliach to do something that you're not able to do right now. According to Chacham, you're not able to annul the vows right now. According to Rabbi Yeshua, you should be allowed to annul the vows. You can appoint a shliach to annul the vows right now, even though you're not able to. Going back, it's a question to what we said before, that you can't appoint a shliach to do something that you can't do right now. If not for the pasuk, Daf Shabbos would be allowed to annul the vows, even though he himself right now cannot annul them, as we see in the Brisa. Gemara says, how do you know that that's a real question? Maybe it's exactly the opposite. Maybe Rabbi Yeshua was not following the Chachamim. Maybe the Rabbi Yeshua is following Rabbi Eliezer that holds that you can annul vows in the future, for the future. A person can tell his wife, any vows that you make until I return should be annulled. Then we have no question. How is he allowed to appoint a shliach to do that? Because he's allowed to do it.
As far as I remember, that's what we concluded in the Gemara, that the shliach was able to annul it.
Yeah. So the Gemara says, 1 second, if the husband is allowed to do that, annul vows for the future, then we have a big question. Question is, if thank you. If the husband can do it himself, the husband can annul the vows on his own for the future. He can say any vows that you make should be annulled. So then why does he have to make a shliach to annul those vows? He could annul the vows right now. When it says Kasavar, he's thinking that Dilma Mishtalina a Ratchana a Mitradina. Says maybe either I'm going to be preoccupied for whatever reason when I return from the trip and I hear about the vows. So because the Gemara said over there that he has to actually hear the vow. So he would only be able to annul it once he returns when he hears it. So that's why he's appointing a shliach to do that annulling. Once he gets back and hears it, the shliach should immediately annul it. But we don't have a proof that he holds that he can't annul it right now. We don't have proof that he holds that although he can't annul it right now, although he can't annul it, we don't have proof that he holds, although he can't annul it right now, he can appoint the shliach to annul it. Because the truth is, he can also annul it. So why do you appoint the shliach? Because he's worried that he's going to be preoccupied when he comes back from the trip, and he won't annul the vows immediately. So he appoints someone else to do that.
I was thinking maybe that it's a wife that takes a lot of vows, that maybe by the time her husband comes back, like she won't know all the vows that she took. So maybe the shliach
Was he able to annul all the vows without specifying them? I think we said yes, because we said that the Talmud Chacham. Oh no, we said no. Talmud Chacham would tell his daughter before she gets married, would say all the vows that you've taken until now. I said, but don't they have to be specified? We said, yeah, they have to be specified. But so why was he saying all the vows? That was just to get her to say which vows there were. Remember, we said something like that. Oh, yeah. Over there, it's a little different. Okay, we have a new Mishnah. Mishnah says, accepting on himself to bring the sacrifices, half the sacrifices of a Nazir. He's going to shave half the Nazir's head, which means he's going to bring half the sacrifices, because the shaving of the head and the sacrifices are done together. So, Shama Chaber, his friend here, is Va'ani, I'm also going to shave half a Nazir. We're going to do this together. Well, Zemegaleach Nazir Shalom, Zemegaleach Nazir Shalom, Div Reb Meir. Meir says that each one has really accepted on himself to bring the sacrifices for a complete Nazir. Now, we're going to see that Meir follows his opinion, which is Taifas Lashon Rishon, that whatever the first thing you say, according to Meir, that's immediately takes effect. As you're speaking, it takes effect. So when he says, Harei alai legaleach, right, takes on himself to shave, which means that he's accepting on himself to bring the sacrifice of a Nazir, and then he adds in Chatzi Nazir. So we say, well, you already said that you're going to bring the sacrifices. You can't add in those details later. To word it differently. That's what your mayor says. Each one is explained what he was saying when he says Harei alai legaleach. Means half the sacrifices of a Nazir. The Nazir has to bring 3 sacrifices, and he would donate the money of 1.5.
He's trying to favor.
He's going to pay for half.
He's trying to help his friend get through this, pay his bills, or what's he doing here?
No, he's just saying, look, I myself don't want to become a Nazir. It's too hard for me, but I'm willing to sponsor someone else's sacrifice, like tzedakah.
So he wants to do a charitable act.
Yeah, yeah.
He's not saying I'm willing to take on the zero.
No, that's another story. That's another case.
So why should it be a problem to give half?
Because Reb Meir says that when he accepted on himself to give the sacrifice of a Nazir, and then he adds in half, according to Reb Meir, when he says the Galeach, that's you've already accepted it. Yeah. Let's take a look at the
I
Gemara.
thought the issue here was that by saying he's taking it upon himself to become a
No.
dozen. Half a dozen.
No, that's another point. That's something else. Let's take a look at the Gemara. The Gemara spells it out a drop. Amar Rava. Did I do the Chachamim? Yeah, I read the Chacham. Amar Rava. Rava says, Hakal Maidim. Everyone would agree. Kol heichadamar chatzi karbanis nazir alai. If his wording is that half the sacrifices of a nazir are upon me, then he worded that correctly, even according to Reb Meir. Chatzi karban maisi. He brings half the sacrifices. Karbanis chatzi nazir alai. This becomes problematic. Here, he's not saying half the sacrifices of a Nazir. He's saying the sacrifices of half a Nazir. Now, there's no such thing as half a Nazir. There's half the sacrifices of a Nazir, but there's no such thing as half a Nazir. This is like the expression, a little bit pregnant. There's no such thing. No such thing as half a Nazir. So, Karbanis, I'm going to bring all the sacrifices of half a Nazir. He's trying to say half the sacrifices, but he says all the sacrifices of half a Nazir. But
Can we discuss someone that will refrain from eating but shaving instead, what he's picking and choosing?
Yeah, that was a machlekes, the Chachamim and Shimon. If he becomes a Nazir entirely, or if he's nothing.
We said it's all or nothing.
Right. According to Reb Shimon, it was all or nothing. And according to the Chachamim, it was he becomes a Nazir because his condition violates what the Torah says. That I'm going to be a Nazir, but I'm not going to. So that didn't work. Okay. What happens over there if he says all the sacrifices of half a Nazir? So Kula Karban Boya, so he has to bring all of the sacrifices because there's no such thing as half a Nazir. He meant a full Nazir. My time, what's the reason? There's no such thing as half a Nazir. They're only arguing about if he uses the language of the Mishnah when he says Harei Alai Legaleach, and then he adds in Chatzi Nazir. Reb Meir Savar Kim Adam Harei Alai. Once he accepts on himself, he says Harei Alai Chayev Kula Karban Naziris. Then he's automatically obligated to bring all of the sacrifices. Chatzi is Naziris. When he adds in half the Naziris, Lav Kol Kamine, we don't accept that statement that he made later that says only part of the sacrifices. Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan say Nedach Pesachimayu. This is like a vow that has the opening together with it, because in that one statement he said that he's going to bring the sacrifices. He's accepting on himself to bring half the sacrifice of a Nazir. So he said half the sacrifices there. So it's considered one statement. Okay. Do we mean to say that a mayor doesn't hold of Tech Dibur? What's going on here?
May remind me of the Shammai, which would go by the first part of the statement.
Right. Actually, the Gemara before said that Shammai follows Reb Meir, right? That's how the Gemara said that. Yeah.
Here cannot hide that it's not in his power to approve his first application.
Right.
So maybe that's why he might not follow.
just looking to see if it says anything about this. Let's see. Okay, now we have a new Mishnah. Harini Nazir l'kashili bain says, I'm going to be a Nazir when I have a child, when I have a son. Specific, he has a son. When I bain and he has a son, or he's a Nazir. He's a Nazir. I was going to ask that this part of the Mishnah is so obvious that it's probably not even necessary to say that. He said when he's going to be a Nazir, and then he had the child, and so he should be a Nazir. Bas. What happened if he didn't have a son? Instead, he had a daughter. Tumtum v'androgynous, or someone that's gender is not really determined. He's a tumtum or a hermaphrodite. Ain't a Nazir. It's not considered a Nazir because he said only when he has a son, and he didn't have a clear-cut son. Something else. Imamar k'shili vlad says when I have an offspring. So I feel in LA bastum to androgynous or is a Nazir. Then he's going to be a Nazir in all of those cases. A Nazir could be a boy or a girl. He's saying he's going to be a Nazir when he has a child.
Oh.
Or if he says it, it's different if he says it when I'm going to have a son or he says when I'm going to have a child. Ipila ishtay, we're on top of 13. If his wife miscarried. Now, what we're talking about over here is that not that she had a miscarriage during the pregnancy, but that she had a child, and the Gemara considers the first month after birth also to be considered when you're checking if the child is really viable. So it's either was born, was a full term, but was born, it was a stillborn, or it passed away immediately after birth. And we say that maybe the child wasn't viable the whole time. You only count from 30 days by the Levium, right? So it says over here, he said that when he has an offspring, his wife has a stillborn. So we say, ain't a Nazir, he's not a Nazir. Reb Shimon says no. Shimon says that you don't really know if this child was really not a child at all. Could be that this was really a viable child. Why did the child die? That was for some other outside cause, not because she didn't have a child. It was an outside cause, some sort of accident that we don't even know about. Like what happened? He stopped breathing or something. It wasn't that he didn't have a child. It was what's the SIDS, sudden infant death, right? It was a death that occurred after birth. It wasn't that the child was never viable. There was a mysterious cause. So therefore, if that's the case, then really his stipulation was fulfilled. And he does have to be a Nazir. Reb Shimon Aimer, Yoimar, the person should really say, Imhaya ben Kayama, Harani Nazir. Or rather, he says, I guess Reb Shimon is saying what the halacha is. Imhaya ben Kayama, Harani Nazir Chayva. This is what he should say right now. Right now, he should say that if this child was viable, then I'm a regular Nazir, and here's my sacrifices, and I'm going to be a Nazir. So in other words, he has to be a Nazir. B'imlav, and if the child wasn't viable, then Harani Nazir Chayva, then I'm going to accept on myself a Nazir anyway. As an Adava, then I'm not doing the obligation Nazir, which I already accepted, I'm just going to do a new Nazir. Because Reb Shimon says, usually we say, the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda was that Stam Nazirus Lahakal. We don't know, or I'm not Stam, Safek Nazirus Lahakal. If there's a doubt about Nazirus, we're lenient. Reb Shimon said no. Reb Shimon said Safek Nazirus is Lahachmer. So here we have a doubt. What's the status of this child, of this stillborn? So Reb Shimon says, well, we have to be strict. One thing is, we don't know for sure. So what we should do is, he should become a Nazir just in case. Then he's going to be a Nazir twice. He says no. What he does is like this. He makes a condition in this Nazirus. He says, if I'm going to be a Nazir now, but if I'm supposed to be a Nazir from before, then that's what I'm going to be a Nazir from before. And if I'm not, if I wasn't supposed to be a Nazir from before, so then at least I'll be a Nazir now. That stipulation covers everything. And then he becomes a Nazir just once. No. He becomes a Nazir by this baby. Chazer v'yalda, let's say there's another baby. He's a Nazir, then he's for sure a Nazir according to the sages. Shimon says, 1 second. Now, according to Reb Shimon, he has to be a Nazir a second time. If the first one was the first Nazirus, then I'm just accepting on himself a voluntary Nazirus. Imlav, if the first one wasn't a Nazirus, that was just a voluntary, so then Harishan Nadava, and then this is my obligation. Okay. According to Reb Shimon, he has to cover all possibilities and accept on himself to be a Nazir. The Gemara says, Hi Maila Memra. We go back to the first question over here. Why did we say that if he says I'm going to be a Nazir when I have a son, he's a Nazir when he has a son, there's no Chiddush there? The Gemara says there is a Chiddush. Not in the first case. Chiddush is in the later case, Mishum Seifa. We said that if he has a daughter, or a Tumtum Andragonus ain't a Nazir. The Gemara says, well, this is also Pshita. This is also obvious. He didn't have a son, so he's not a Nazir. The Gemara says, well, could have thought that he didn't really mean a son. He meant an offspring that will be able to have a son later.
That's what
She'evna, yeah,
like
it's a
built
quote,
up, right?
right? Ve'ibane gam anochi mimena. This is when the wives were giving, Rachel and Leah were giving the maidservants, Bilhah and Zilpah. It'll be as if I had a son. Maybe that would count. If she says when I have a child, an offspring, then we say that even if it's a girl or a that would also work. The Gemara says Pshita, that's obvious, or it's a hermaphrodite. Mal the tema vlad the mechshav beini and shibinan kamash malan. I think there's two ways of reading this. One way is that the chiddush is on the hermaphrodite and the tumtum, that's I could have thought that that's not considered an offspring. People don't consider that an offspring. But however, I see in Taisvus that even with the girl, maybe this is like a very Sephardic comment, that it's not considered a child unless it's a boy, right? This Mayo tells me, he says, when his wife is having a child, he says, I don't care, a girl or boy, it doesn't, as long as there's a breast.
Wow.
Yeah.
So maybe would say that doesn't count. They had a girl. So Kamash Malan, that's not the way it works. He said he was has an offspring. Yeah. Ipili Ishtay ain't a Nazir. His wife had a miscarriage, then he's not a Nazir. Man Katanila, who would say that? That's Rabbi Yehuda the Krihu. This is Rabbi Yehuda of the silo. Now we had this before, that if someone takes accepts on himself to be a Nazir, and he says, if there are 100 core or something, a certain amount in the silo, and then turns out that some of it got lost and so Rabbi Yehuda says that he's not a Nazir. Rabbi Shimon said that he is a Nazir, because the question was if you go lenient when you have a doubt, and Rabbi Yehuda said you're lenient. So over here, when there's a miscarriage, we're going to be lenient. But if it's a stillborn, we're going to be lenient. We're going to say that the child wasn't viable. I skipped Reb Shimon. Thank you. Reb Shimon Aimer. Reb Shimon says, Reb Shimon says that no, we have to be strict, and we don't know what's the status of the stillborn. So therefore, we're going to say that he has to take on himself a new Nazirus just in case, and with the stipulation that if I'm really a Nazir, then I'm a Nazir, and if I wasn't a Nazir, I'm going to accept a new Nazir. Okay, now, Rav Abba asks Rav Huna a question. Rav Huna is a student of Rav. We're going back early generation here amongst Amiraim. It says, Harini Nazir l'kshia libein. Someone says, I'm accepting on himself to be a Nazir when I have a child. His wife had a stillborn, bifrish carbon, and he designated sacrifices. But then b'chazar v'yolda. Then she actually had a child. Mahu, what's the din with those sacrifices? Aliba deman, who are you asking a question for? Aliba de Reb Shimon mighty bailei. If it's according to Reb Shimon, then of course he had to designate sacrifices because he has to be strict. Reb Shimon suffering Nazir Slahachmer, and he was designated sacrifices because Reb Shimon says that that's a real designation. Aliba de Reb Yehuda, Dam suffering Nazir Slahakal. Must be according to Reb Yehuda you're asking the question. Reb Yehuda says that really he's lenient, and when he designated the sacrifice of a Nazir after the stillborn, that was totally unnecessary. He doesn't have to bring the sacrifices. My Kaddish Eloi Kaddish. Is it says consecrated or not? Now the truth is now he does have to bring sacrifices. So he would be able to use them because he had another child. The Gemara says, "My nafkamina, what's the difference? He's going to bring them now." No, the gizase v'lavid by. Question is, then yeah. So afterwards, now it's considered. Question is, what the Gemara is saying here is that is he allowed to use the shearings of wool that were on this animal from the beginning? Use the shearings of wool. Is it considered consecrated from the time that he consecrated it, or do we say no? Do we say that it's not consecrated because he didn't actually need to bring? What's the? I'm not sure what the basis of the Gemara's question is. The basis that he made a mistake, that he thought that he needed to and he really didn't. Let me see how to put this.
Are the offerings already considered consecrated and not be consecrated again, or are they not consecrated therefore
Right. So what's the basis of the question? What is the basis of this? He consecrated them, but he doesn't need them at that point. So is the question that when you consecrate something that's not necessary, is it consecrated? Is that what's happening?
You mentioned that according to Rabbi Yehuda, he doesn't have to observe the first.
Right. He doesn't have to. Right. The question is, what's the story with these sacrifices? Okay. The Gemara says, leaves off with the question. Take them. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that they are consecrated, and we leave it as a question. Yeah, I'm not sure what the basis of the question is. Boy ben Rechumi me'abaya. Son of Rechumi asked Abaya, Harini nazal kshili bein v'shama chaver v'ama v'alai. It's a very interesting question. Someone says, I'm going to be a Nazir when I have a son. His friend hears and says, and upon me as well. Well, Mahu Adibura Mashma, does he mean when his friend has a son, he's going to be a Nazir as well? Gufei Mashma, or does it mean when he has a son? It's a very good question.
He would just take his comment, just apply it
To him.
So he would have his own son.
Imtim Telaima Gufei Mashma. If it means his own son. So then, Amaharini Nazir, the Shia. Okay, there's two ways of reading this Gemara. Let's try it. Let's try it this way, and then I'll switch it in a moment. If he says, Amaharini Nazir Kshili Ben, Vashama Chaver Vamar Vani, Mahuan, Afshay Kamar, Idil Mahachi Kamar, Rechim Lach Kavase. Instead of saying upon me, he says, and me too. So then, what's going to be? Does that mean that I'll also be a Nazir when you have a son, or does it mean, or does that also mean on himself? Okay, that's one possibility. There's another version to this Gemara, which is interesting.
Sounds like what we heard on Friday, that what he said me too, if it was applied to the first part of the statement, or was it the whole statement?
Right, exactly. No, it is the whole statement. But the question is, do we retranslate the statement for him, or do we keep it as the statement of Reuven, the first person? right? This is the Gemara does. Dun minei vuki basrei. Remember Gemaras like this. When we borrow halachas from one place and we apply it to another place, do we keep all the original rules of that, or do we redefine it based on the new situation that we're in? So here also, when we take we're like borrowing the statement from someone else, do we keep it with its original translation interpretation that it's the first person's child, and then, or do we redefine it for the person that's now taking that statement, borrowing that statement? The other interpretation is the other text goes like this. You notice I have a little star. I don't know what you have on your Gemara. It says Amar Hareini. I'm reading it again. Amar Hareini Nazir L'Kshia L'Chabein. I'll be a Nazir when you have a son. Shama Chaver V'Amar V'Ani. And then the friend hears and says, so will I. Now, does he mean when he has a son, when he himself, Shimon himself has a son? Or does he mean when Reuven has the son, the one that said it first? That's a very interesting. We adjusted the word from li to lach. Do you see that? 3 lines from the bottom. The kshia li bain. On the side of my Gemara, it says, yeah, but it says, Amar Hareini Nazir L'Kshia L'Cha Bain. Adjust the li to L'Cha. Switch that. Do you have any note there? Does it say anything? And no star, nothing? No number? You're missing out. But, okay. Is he referring to himself? Or is he saying that I love you so much that I'll become a Nazir when you have the child? If you want to say kol ba'anpei, if because it's in front of the person, he's sufa le'milsei, he's ashamed, and he wants to say that's when the other person has the child, right? It would be like this, because they're both saying this in front of the person, they're standing together. He's not going to say, I'm going to be a Nazir when I have the child. The person said, I'll be a Nazir when you have a child. Let's say that's the case. That's the text. I'll be a Nazir when you have a child. So then he's not going to say, I'll be a Nazir when I have a child. He wants to say about the other person. But go back. Or in the first case, he says, basically, in front of the person, he's always going to want to show that he's his friend, and he's going to do it when the other person has some benefit. That's the child. Okay. However, if that's the case, then Amar Hareini Nazir L'Kshia L'Pleni Bain. What happens if he says, I'll be a Nazir when so-and-so has a child, and the person isn't even standing there? Shama Chaver V'Amar V'Ani. And the friend hears and says, me too. So, Mahu. Do we say that because that person isn't here, he really means I'll also be a Nazir when I have the child? A Dilma, or maybe he says, I love him also just as much as you do. So that the Gemara says Tibai, which means basically take him. We'll leave it as a question. Okay, let's send the Mishnah.
All these cases where they agree.
Yeah.
So, concerned with what the deal is. There are a bunch of busy bodies standing around. They got to know what's going on. Who's that? Who's concerned here?
Question is, why can't we ask him?
It's not. Why can't we ask him? What's your business? Why do you have to ask him? He knows that he's pledged. Why are you getting involved?
Right.
What are you so worried about what he pledged?
We want to hold them accountable, though.
You don't have, there's nothing to hold accountable. It's to have them unlock him.
Right.
All the backbenchers and backers were all worried about what he said. I don't understand what he said. We'll find out. It's not your business.
I mean, the only thing I can think of.
If he owes somebody
Right.
something, it's one. There's no Marcus here. He's gonna bring his carbon eventually between him and God. So who are we concerned about? That's bothered by who has standing in this that has to care about what he said?
Yeah, I don't know. All I can say is maybe the person made a statement he wasn't really thinking. Now we're trying to determine what that means
There
without
were
thinking.
different situations. You bring down an example this was between a person and Hashem. But we see like during the time of the Sanhedrin, the person would get Malchus.
someone violates the Naziris, there's no malchus, right? That's
That's what we seem to be.
right. He becomes tummy, he has to restart. What happens if he drinks wine? There's no malchus.
I think in the scenario where you just said, he said me too, but then you realize I had a momentary lapse. I wasn't really sure what I was thinking.
Right.
But I think if I'm correct, if he's not clear on his own, like he didn't understand what he was pledging.
Maybe it doesn't count.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
I'm sure there's different opinions. Some people are strict, like it doesn't matter if you said it, here it goes.
Right. But what Abnas is asking is that we don't care what other people say. It's only between him and God. He'll say, but that's what I meant. Unless we say that we don't know the person himself has some doubt about what he meant. We did have that. That's interesting. We had that case where you weren't supposed to be matir neder in front of the person that knows about the neder. If you made a vow to someone, you had to have that person there. Remember? Otherwise, they may think that you're just violating your vow. So how did you end up doing that? You vowed to me that you weren't going to do that. Now I see you doing it. So, and then he's going to say, I got it. No, you have to annul it in front of the person that you vowed to.
In the case that is between the person and Hashem, there's no witnesses involved, or is it just between?
Yeah. But it seems okay. The Mishnah says like this: Harini Nazir, I'll be a Nazir. The Nazir, I'll be a Nazir again, Kashieli Ben, when I have a child. That means he's going to be a Nazir twice. But one of them has a stipulation that it doesn't start right away. He starts counting his own Naziris. Then he has the child. So he still finishes his own first because that's what he accepted on himself first. And then he has the second Naziris that he has because he had a son. Harini Nazir, Kashieli Ben, the Nazir says exactly the opposite. Says, I'm going to be a Nazir when I have a son. And then he accepts on himself also another Naziris. Nothing to do with it, and no, without any stipulation. So he didn't have a son yet. So he starts practicing the second Naziris first. He does the second Naziris. And then in the middle of the second Naziris, he has a son. So he leaves his own Naziris and he starts counting the Naziris for his son. I guess it means he leaves his own, means he doesn't shave the head. But he starts to, because he accepted on himself the Naziris when he has a son, before he accepted on his own Naziris, but he was just starting that because he didn't have a son. But now that he has a son, he has to go back to the first one and complete the first one, and then he does his own Naziris after that. Let's leave the Gemara because it's going to take us into the whole next stage.
And in that case, he's able to do them both together and then just shave his head one.
That's what it seems like. Yeah. Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Kol Tov.
You too.
Good morning.